Yeah, thanks, Marty. This whole thing, the only reason I came was to talk about Botox parties. So, Nikki Haley, we got a shot. It could be that she could save our country. I'm gonna go into a couple of interesting thoughts that I've had. One is I'm gonna start macro, which I don't usually do, because I don't know if you guys are following this, but we had Trump printed $10 trillion. And what that meant was your dollars were worth less. And that's what inflation's all about. And then the Fed says, oh, we're having inflation. We have a dual mandate, inflation and jobs, and we better, cut back on this inflation. So they raise the interest rates. And then the politicians start flipping out and they say, wait a second, that's going to make it tough on me because I want to stay in office. And so Biden is kind of going, whoa, we got crazy inflation and we're raising the rates and we keep raising the rates and we still got crazy inflation. So what does he do? Well, we had all this oil. We used to have all this oil. He basically has blown through our oil reserves so that the price of oil was artificially low so that we don't have high inflation numbers. And so if you guys are thinking, and he's run through more than half of our oil reserves in the last year, more than half of our oil reserves. Well, I look at that and I say, he's got maybe 40% left. And then what happens? Then we get inflation again. And then we get high interest rates again. And then we go through the same cycle. And eventually politicians can't take it down the road any further. And, this was sort of the beginning of all the hyperinflationary countries. This is what happened in Argentina. This is what happened in Venezuela. This is what happens in Nigeria. They have hyperinflation. Nobody trusts their currency because they've been fooling. The government just prints and prints and prints so they can spend money. And then we are stuck with some weird currency. Well, that's a pretty good argument for holding some Bitcoin. And if that isn't a good enough argument for holding Bitcoin, we had that spike in interest rates and Silicon Valley Bank went under. They lost all their customers. And I had entrepreneurs all over me going, wait, we need emergency funding. And I'm saying, well, why? Well, we had all our money in Silicon Valley Bank and we got to pull it out. And what are we going to do? And so I, in some cases, was the magnanimous investor. And I said, okay, we'll put more money in these terms. And in some cases, I was very draconian. But I went ahead and worked to bail out all of our companies for that one weekend. And then Silicon Valley Bank thing, no problem. The government decided they were just going to print more money and they were going to bail everybody out, bail out Silicon Valley Bank. And they did. And so what did I tell all my entrepreneurs after that? Well, I said, well, you should be in a big bank and you should be in a small bank and you should be in Bitcoin. So your treasury should be in 3 places. And they're saying, well, why? Because you're personally liable for the payroll for at least 2 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. And if your bank goes under, you are personally liable. You and your board, you're all personally liable. And they said, well, I understand the big bank, but why the small bank? And I said, because the small bank is small enough so that the government will bail them out and be able to bail them out. But if JP Morgan goes out of business, what government can bail out JP Morgan? And then they say, well, why the Bitcoin? Well, if the banks go out of business, you are still liable for the payments to your making your payroll. So Bitcoin, again, is a great solution. You're wondering why it's worth more now. And I was telling all my entrepreneurs this, but then I didn't even do it for my own fund. And I went, well, I better do it for my own fund. And so we did it, and boy, it's been better than holding money in the bank at 5%. Okay, that's my Bitcoin ad. Part of this was going to be about venture capital, so I'm going to go into venture capital because that's how I make my living. Well, the venture business is changing. It's really interesting. When I first started out in venture capital, I was knocking on doors and asking. I'd go to these big developments and they'd say something software in a few of the little compartments. And so I'd knock on the door and I'd say, hey, are you guys looking for money? And everybody's, oh yeah, of course we are. And so I was able to find entrepreneurs that way. That was how I got started in the venture business. I borrowed money from the Small Business Administration, the SBIC program, and then I was knocking on all these doors. And actually, I knocked on Intuit's door at one point, and the woman there said, "No solicitors," and she sends me out the door. And I was going, but you give away money. I guess I wasn't dressed well enough. Too bad, because Intuit would have been a huge monster success in our portfolio. Anyway, that's how I started with venture capital. My grandfather was the first Silicon Valley venture capitalist. My dad was a pioneer of venture capital. I think he set up the first GP-LP relationship in the world. And I've been focused on getting venture capital out there to the world. I've sort of broken the borders for venture capital. That's been kind of my mission in life. Well, what's happened to venture capital? Well, I think a lot of my friends looked at me and thought, well, that guy's not too bright, and he's making money in this business. I'm going to go make money in that business too. And so a bunch of my friends started venture firms, a bunch of people started venture firms, and I spread the word around the world, and lots of people started venture firms all around the world. And that's been fantastic for freedom, for hope, for people with vision, people who want to take a chance on the world. It's been extraordinary for the world. But now we'll get down to sort of the last couple of years and the next couple of years. The last couple of years in venture capital, all those venture capitalists could do no wrong. The business was booming. Everything was great. There were people raising tons of money, Code2, Tiger Global, people who were really investment bankers just saying, I'm a venture capitalist, I'm getting into this business. And they raised so much money that it kind of ruined our business, which meant I fund companies, I put $1 million in and I take 20% or something, and we grow the company and it grows organically and kind of picks up and it starts going. And then when it's a pretty good success, they need money to grow, so they're out there raising 10 million. And Tiger Global says, you're raising 10 million, here's 100 million at $1 billion valuation, take it. And then the entrepreneurs go, whoa, this is awesome. And I'm thinking, uh-oh, this could go badly. Now, why could it go badly? They only needed 10 million and they just raised $100 million. What could go wrong there? Okay, so what happens? They hire all their friends. They build up their huge burn rate because Tiger Global keeps being able to raise more money and pouring it in, blah, blah, blah. And they're just piling the money, the money's coming in and going out and coming in and going out. And then the music stops. And my company, which was doing really well and only needed $10 million, has been trying to solve all its problems with money. And they hit the wall. They've got, they needed 50 people, they have 500 people. And they can't do anything. I say, cut it down to, you got 500 people, cut it down to 4. And they say, 400? And they're freaking out. They have to lay off 100 people and saying, no, 4 people. Look, you have no business here. And they're kind of wondering what's happened. So, okay, I fortunately am old enough to have seen the movie before. This all happened in the dot-com business. It came up, it came crashing down. We scrambled. We fought in tooth and nail trying to pull things together, raise money for companies. Everything was starting to come back, and then boom, the regulators hit us with Sarbanes-Oxley, and we got another 4 years of just the death march. Our LPs were screaming at us. Life was rough. We were thinking that we had opportunities to buy companies at cheaper prices. That was a mistake. Okay, you think you're going to get bargains by, hey, this late stage company was worth $1 billion yesterday, and now I can get it for 200 million. What a great deal that seems like. But a lot of those companies are just spiraling down to nothing. Now, let me tell you why. After a crash like that, everybody's freaking out. Big companies are laying off people. Some weird stuff starts to happen. Companies that were growing and everything was going well are hitting a wall. They're working with technologies that are 15 years old now. They might be 15-year-old companies. And what happens? The big companies start looking around for ways to do things cheaper, better, faster. Where are they looking? Well, it turns out they're looking at the seeds. This is the time for the seeds. The seed investing that happened, it's interesting. You look at the 30 biggest companies in the world by market cap. They were almost all started 2 to 4 years after a financial crash. 2 to 4 years after. So what happens is everybody has to lick their wounds and people get laid off, and then all of a sudden people get innovated and they get going and they start something and they want to start a real business, and the money doesn't matter anymore. It's just the vision, and they go, wow, we've got this new technology. It's going to be really great. And I can start something now. Those were the winners. Those were the winners from 2004 to 2007. You wanted to be seeding companies. So, and why? Why is that? Big companies are looking for what's newer, better, cheaper, and you're working with technology that is 15 years better than the technology that was done by the companies that Coatue put $100 million into. So you've got better technology. You can hire the best and the brightest because you can get them, because there are big layoffs going on. So you can hire really good people. You have very little competition because no money is going in to small ventures. Nobody else is out there. So as long as you're an entrepreneur and you're willing to do whatever it takes, you've got a pretty interesting shot. So what's happening out there? Okay, I'll start with the technologies. I got to be there for the big internet boom and bust, and then super boom. And I watched as that technology transformed communications, information, gaming, entertainment, media, taxis, hotels. The internet completely transformed our world. In fact, try to go a day without a phone. Just give it a shot. See how it goes. One day. And then Bitcoin came. Incredible new technology. It went up, it came down, and now it's on its way on another rifle shot. And it is transforming banking, commerce, real estate, insurance, parts of government because of DAOs and smart contracts, legal, bunch of other industries. And now we got AI. AI is going to be so cool. If you haven't tried ChatGPT, you got to try it. I wrote a Shakespearean, I said, ChatGPT, write a Platonic Shakespearean poem, Shakespearean prose, to my two assistants, two different poems to my two assistants. Thing writes perfect iambic pentameter, says I've loved working with you, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on, it's fantastic. So I handed them to him, and I didn't really explain that it was ChatGPT that had done it. And I mean, I kind of did, but they didn't know what ChatGPT was. And so they kind of looked at me like, I didn't know you felt this way. So anyway, it's amazing what you can do with it. I wrote software programs. I'm not even a software designer anymore. I used to be. You can use AI and you just say, I want a picture in Van Gogh style with a cat and a couple of lovers and a stream running between the cat and the lovers. And boom, there it is. It's absolutely amazing. And that's just the beginning. It's pretty clear ChatGPT is going to transform education. Here's what I'm picturing. When I was talking to this great guy who's the head of the Department of Astrophysics at Berkeley, and he looks at me and he goes, yeah, I just went into the faculty lounge. And I said, don't tell me. And I said, okay, let's say there were 10 people in there. 2 of them are saying, wow, our admissions office is doing a really good job. These essays are exceptional. About 6 of them are going, ban this ChatGPT, get rid of it. We don't want it anywhere near our school. And then there are 2 of them going, wow, we could do a lot with our curriculum. This could be awesome. And actually, that's kind of you've got the opportunists, you've got the fear, and you've got the Luddites. And they're all kind of a part of what's going on in AI today. And most of the writers are writing about fear or Luddites, most of the press. But it's coming, and it's so cool. Okay, no venture. I haven't done any robotic investments except one robot brain until now. Because imagine now, here's what AI used to do. Pick up the microphone, move it over here. Pick up the microphone, move it back. That was called an expert system. And it required somebody to show the robot, this is what you do with a microphone. Okay, but now we got neural networks, and they are amazing. Here's what you can do with a neural network. Learn that that's a microphone. Figure out what you can do with it. Okay, I'm going to give you a great example of a neural network. It's the first one we ever did. It was 20 years ago. we funded a company, and they were this software company. They had this software, and they said, yeah, we got 7-Eleven, the convenience store, as a customer. I said, well, that's great. And they said, yeah. And they gave us all their data. And that was when data was like, nobody cared about data. It was like, here. And they gave us all their data, and then they just went away. And we just put it into our neural network. But what did we find out? Beer and diapers. Turns out when people buy diapers, they buy beer at 7-Eleven. And to this day, at 7-Eleven, the beer is next to the diapers. But it's not something that's obvious to any of us. No expert would have gone in there and said, put the beer next to the diapers. So the neural networks are gonna find out stuff that we never imagined. They're gonna make our lives so easy. But here's what's really cool. We do have kind of cool robots who can do like lots of interesting things with their hands and legs. Well, now you can have those with real intelligence, real, like, I know that's a microphone. I need to raise my voice. I think I broke it. Sorry, Marty. And so we're gonna have robots that learn at extraordinary rates. So I think we're gonna walk around with this for the next 4 or 5 years. But later on, we're gonna be walking around with a robot, and we're gonna go, hey, I need a toothbrush, and then just boom, robot goes out, gets me a toothbrush, comes back, here's your toothbrush. By the way, there's a new one on the market, you wanna try it out. I mean, the robot will start telling you, do things for you that you never even imagined that you could ever do. So AI is gonna be as cool as Bitcoin. And what's happening in the Bitcoin world is exactly what happened to Microsoft. Microsoft created this platform, and they said, go ahead and experiment with this operating system. Go ahead, build stuff. What's up? People went off and they built stuff. And it was click art, and it was, you know, weird little games and other stuff. And then Microsoft noticed there was something called WordPerfect that was, you know, pretty big company. And so Microsoft said, okay, we're gonna make Word a part of the operating system. So you can just keep exploring things, keep trying things, but we're gonna have Word there too. And then they saw, boy, that Lotus 1, 2, 3 spreadsheet's getting a lot of attention. And all of a sudden, Excel was a part of the operating system. And the same thing happened with PowerPoint, with databases, and they're all a part of like Office, Microsoft Office now. The same thing's happening with Bitcoin. Bitcoin created this incredible new platform for finance, commerce, currency, everything. And then they sort of let all these other ones go and explore different ways of doing stuff. And so there were, I mean, for every 1 or 2 that seem like they're really catching, there have been like 100 startups that were just didn't matter. But now the Bitcoin developers know, hey, here are the ones that work. We want DeFi, we want NFTs, which we're now calling ordinals so that they're more important. We want smart contracts. We want to use the blockchain for accounting purposes and for keeping track of who owns what, art versus whatever. And that's gonna be where it all goes. And so all the important ones are now moving on to Bitcoin. And that's the same thing Microsoft did, and it was a strategy that worked magic. So I suspect that a lot of these smaller tokens might, now there were small software companies and they did succeed, but there were a lot more that didn't make it. And I think we're going to be seeing the same thing with tokens. Now, one more thing on tokens. Since I bought all that Bitcoin, Marty mentioned to you that I bought all that Bitcoin way back when. And maybe I don't know if I need to get into the story. Actually, I bought a bunch of Bitcoin at 4, lost it all to the Mt. Gox fiasco. Then I bought a whole bunch, and then I thought it was all over. Like, who would want Bitcoin if the biggest trader of Bitcoin just basically stole all the money? And then I went and did some research, and I realized they're using it for remittance, in addition to using it for drug trade and arms dealing and whatever else. They're using it for remittance, for paying people overseas who don't have bank accounts, and then they're using it within countries where the country doesn't trust its currency. And I thought, wow, this is a big deal. And so that's why I paid above market for the Bitcoin when the Marshal's office thing happened. So that's the story. But now you've got all that Bitcoin, and people are concerned about the dollar. Do we trust the dollar? It's tied to politics, tied to some central force. Well, if the dollar is tied to a central force, all these people, after I bought that Bitcoin, all these people came through the Draper Associates offices saying, I've got an ICO, I've got a new currency, I've got it. They were all centralized. FTX came through twice. BlockFi came through. Celsius came through. We turned them all down. We said the whole point of this currency is that it's decentralized. If you want a centralized token, we've got a central bank in the US. I think the hook's coming.
You got 5 minutes.
5 minutes. So we've got a central bank. I don't need a new centralized currency. I want a decentralized currency. And so that's why I've been sort of all over Bitcoin. Like, wow, it's decentralized. No one node can shoot it down because there are all these other nodes checking and keeping track. And I actually think El Salvador, God, I met these government officials from El Salvador, and I'm in the Silicon Valley, center of the universe for technology, right? I met these people and I was jealous. And, you're thinking, what? Jealous? El Salvador, poorest country in the world or something like that? Well, they have made Bitcoin a national currency, and they are already talking about how they built smart contracts, how real contracts are being built in software. You don't need the lawyer. You don't need the accountant to do auditing or anything, because the blockchain is keeping perfect records. So I think it'll be one country at a time. It'll be a domino effect, and slowly but surely, all the countries of the world are going to recognize that this is a better way to collect taxes. It's a better way to keep track of everybody's money. It's a better way for the people of the country to trust their currency, and that way the economy will grow. And so that's really an exciting thing. Now I'm seeing, I'll take them in a second. I'm seeing these, all these interesting trends. We're seeing trends in space. We're seeing, oh my God, you guys want to hear a real blow-away trend? Here's a blow-away trend. Cures. Okay, big pharma is built on treatments. They're totally built on treatments. They want to sell you the same drug they sell me. We are genetically different. We eat differently. We live in different places, but they want to sell us the same drug. So they run these tests, and we end up taking the same drug, same dosage, same whatever. You get a bigger dosage than I do relative to the body size. but somehow Big Pharma has convinced us all to do this. Big Pharma continues to cost our GDP more and more and more, but we're living shorter lives. So those are opportunities I look for. I look for a situation where you're paying a high price for bad service in an industry that's run by an oligopoly or a monopoly. And that's where I look for big, interesting new companies. Anyway, there are cures coming. There's cures for cancer coming. There are cures for diabetes coming. There are cures for heart disease coming. They're making their way through FDA. Okay, they're going to price them at $1 million a shot or something. But think of the dynamic, think of the money dynamic of something like that. That is just gonna, Big Pharma is gonna try to squash that every step they can. But we're gonna want the cure. Anyway, I think they're gonna be interesting insurance companies that take that $1 million and do something interesting with it.
We've got time for a couple of questions.
Okay. I won't go into
Norm?
space and defense then. Go ahead.
Thanks, Rob Colorino. With respect to your mandate flexibility, when you first went into Bitcoin, was that something you had the sort of the discretion and flexibility to do? And then your current strategy now, is it deviated very much from sort of the early days? Can you speak a little bit about that? Because I respect the discipline. You're not doing like private credit. You're kind of sticking to these to the guns.
Human endeavor, that's what I invest in. Yeah, I had 12 partners. They were telling me what to do. I tried to get 2 very big deals through that partnership and then shot them down. And I thought, wait, I started this. Jesus. So I spun out and I started to invest on my own. And I found this Bitcoin opportunity and I brought it to the partnership. Draper, you're an idiot. Yeah, forget it, go away. I'm a rich idiot. So I went ahead and I bought that Bitcoin. And then they said, oh, don't start it. You know, it's like, don't start a school. I started a school for entrepreneurs. Now it's the biggest deal source we've got. We've got 4,000 students out there in 104 different countries, all sending me deals regularly. I just ran into one. There she is. You remember any of the pledge? No, it was 10 years ago. Okay.
Fantastic. What time for one more question?
But then I also started a show. And like when I started it, I couldn't get my mother to watch. But now we got 70 million viewers. And now it's like everywhere. So we can actually, we're seeing 1,000 entrepreneurs apply to be one of the 4 people on the show. And the show's all, I mean, it's like, we're not Shark Tank. It's like, hey, here's a guy who invented a gum scraper, you know? And we got like real companies in there doing like, hey, satellite communications. It's really fun. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have autonomy. And so now I invest, I take 30% of every one of my funds, and I only accept 70%. This one's closing in 2 weeks, in case anybody cares. Tim at Draper.vc. Yeah.
We've made a lot of life-size investments in most recently technology companies. One of the trends, we're doing a secondary with Stripe right now, that I've seen is that Stripe actually is the fastest company in the world with $1 billion in transactional value, transactional volume inside of 12 years. And that made me think about what you're thinking about with the advent and all this. And I think if you bring the blockchain and AI together, maybe I'm thinking I'm kind of crazy about this, but during the diligence process, I was thinking you're probably going to see companies worth billions of dollars with 4 employees in the next 4 years. Is that crazy to think?
No, no, and yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. We run a lot of our business on AI now, and long term, I think AI is going to do a better job of choosing companies than I do. Yeah.
Your thoughts on Satoshi Island?
Wait, where is it? Are you talking, because there are several.
The one in Fiji.
Yeah, well, I think what's happening is people are looking and saying, governments are getting overbearing. I'm looking for freedom. Where do I go? And, I mean, think about, governments, the greatest leaders in the world are the ones who trust their people and set them free. The weak leaders are the ones like President Xi, President Putin, who try to control everybody and tell them all what to do. You want a leader who trusts people and sets them free. I think you just want that. You want that freedom. Your economy grows better. You have happier people. Every time I go to a country that has turned to freedom, the people are all smiling. Every time I go to a country that has, like going back to China, I used to love going to China. Now I go to China and I go, this is depressing. This is a miserable place to be. So anyway, if you're a leader, trust your people, set them free. You'll be pleasantly surprised. Don't be a weak leader. Don't try to control everybody and tell them all what to do. I will leave you with that.